The advertisements surrounding video games used to be absolutely insane. In the early 2000s, it felt like every single concept for any kind of media or promotion for a game was experimental and bold across the board. They combined some of the most insane typography with images that definitely wouldn't fly by today's standards, but together they formed some of the most strong and memorable campaigns that the industry had ever seen. Unfortunately though, as gaming became more and more mainstream, it feels like a lot of this charm and personality that these older advertisements had has just been nowhere to be found. But yeah, dude, if you're anything like me, you're probably looking around and wondering, what happened to all the cool we had when we were kids? It's not just a problem with the gaming industry either. A lot of people on the internet have been talking about how things today seem much more dull than they used to, but what really happened? In my opinion, as the world rushed to get more and more modern, it seems like companies settled to communicate things as quickly and simply as they can, often losing any soul in the process. When a lot of these really cool and interesting ads were made, it kind of seems like companies were all competing for the same people's attention, so they really put out some of the most insane, eye-catching stuff that they could. But, capitalism breeds innovation and all that, so I guess it worked out. Design was also much more expensive back then, especially if any kind of photography was involved, because that most likely would have been on film. Because of that, companies probably didn't want to spend their resources making concepts that they weren't positive were going to work, so they really thought things through ahead of time. Compare that to today, where anyone can fire up a design program and create a concept and see if it's working or not in just a few minutes, which takes a lot less intention behind the process of creating and coming up with the idea in general. Computer-aided design was also just becoming a thing, which played heavily into some of these ads because they were designed around that concept while it was still becoming a thing and becoming more of a mainstay in the design language, which created some really cool examples of how it evolved over time. Another thing that I think designers did really successfully back then was they leaned heavily into whatever aesthetic it was that they were going for to make something that was truly memorable. Horror games, fantasy games, sci-fi games, all the advertisements leaned heavily into that vision with bold text and typography that fit that to really make something that was all tied together and felt part of an ecosystem within that genre. Now, when you look at the type of advertisements we see today, it's that same dull, geometric, boring look that I touched on earlier, which I think doesn't really sell the idea of video games being this fun escape. It kind of just feels forced, or like the company is reaching as many people as it possibly can, even if it's a little bit alienating to the fans that they built up years ago. I have really fond memories as a kid of discovering some of these things for the first time, or seeing advertisements for certain games, and just getting really excited for how interesting and how much love you can feel was poured into that. And now it just feels like companies are trying to make something that has the most wide appeal possible, which is so alienating to people like me that grew up with much more niche and catered advertising. What's the solution to all of this though? It's definitely fun to sit around and complain about it, but as a graphic designer, I feel a certain obligation to try my hand at making my own advertisements that fit this niche and are inspired by some of these early 2000s bangers. I chose 3 different products that I actually use in my very own setup, and I wanted to give them this treatment to see if I could make advertisements that were interesting, modern, but still fit that early aesthetic. So for the first ad, I knew I wanted to focus on the keyboard that I use, and I think one of the strengths of these early print ads were that they took so much time to come up with a concept that was strong and then use the design to support the concept. I wanted to do something sci-fi related, so I started going through these concepts and brainstorming about how a keyboard could relate to anything sci-fi, and eventually I started thinking of this idea of using the keyboard as the dashboard on a spaceship, kind of to signify, using the keyboard to navigate in-game, to come across different galaxies or whatever. It's obviously a little bit of a stretch, but just to make something fun that relates the keyboard back to the sci-fi genre. So once I had that concept in mind, I came up with this. And it's not great, right? But I think the concept was there. I just needed to work through some of the kinks a little bit more to make something that felt more polished, because this definitely wasn't working. I mean, the type feels super clunky, the image is kind of awkwardly positioned, and I don't love the stock image that I chose. So I wanted to see if we could come up with something better. So from here, the first thing I wanted to do was come up with a better background image. So I spent some time searching around the web and eventually combined several different things in Photoshop to make something that felt more cohesive and more interesting to me. I think moving the keyboard up in the composition also helped tremendously because it made it so that it felt more central and more important, not getting lost towards the bottom like it was before, and just really allowing it to shine a little bit. Now, once my background image was feeling pretty good, I wanted to work that text back in there. I felt like Keys to the Universe would be a better heading and really fit more into that concept, as well as, again, highlighting the keyboard a little bit more. So I went with that, and then I added some sci-fi type effects on it to really make it pop against the dark background. From here, I noticed that in a lot of old advertisements, they use containers at the bottom of the page to highlight extra images, whether it be in-game screenshots or product images. But here, I thought it would be a great place to put in some extra pictures of the keyboard, specifically highlighting some of the features it has, like RGB lighting or the aluminum backplate, or, whatever random pictures I could find online. I definitely feel like adding these extra images in helped balance the page and really made it feel like the keyboard was still central, but had a little bit more fun elements to it and something that really popped at the bottom and contrasted with the orange at the top of the page. From there, it was simply adding back in the body copy and a couple logos for the brand, and then doing some final grain and texture over the image to make something that felt really polished. And yeah, with that, I felt like this was pretty final, especially coming from where we started. I felt like it served well towards the concept that I had in my head and the original idea, and really felt unique and like it fit the original criteria of something that could have come from the early 2000s. Next up, I wanted to focus on my headset and do something horror themed. Horror has always been a genre that I'm really fond of, and I think there's some interesting and unique aesthetics within that we can tap into. Like before, I spent a lot of time brainstorming a concept that I could use, and eventually I thought of this idea of hear them before they hear you, which I think definitely plays into those creepy vibes a little bit. I started by looking around for images like before and stitched a couple things together to be this picture of a guy coming through a door with this kind of grunge texture over top of it that felt really distressed and spooky, and I was really liking it. So from there, I added my text back in with this slogan and found this really interesting font that almost looks like a sort of ransom note or something like that, and distressed it a little bit, as well as added some glow to make it look almost ghostly to kind of fit that horror aesthetic. Like before, I knew I wanted to incorporate the image of the headset somehow, so I thought this ellipse at the end of the slogan would be a perfect place to kind of hang the headset off to make it look like it was part of the scene. It just so happened that this person in the photo, it lined up pretty well that their flashlight was pointed right where the headset was, so I accentuated that a little bit to really make it pop and stand out as if the headset had just been found in game, as if it was some kind of helpful item. Yeah, I was definitely feeling this one, so I added my body copy in, which just describes some of the features of the headset, and took it back into Photoshop to do some grain, some texture, and finalize everything and make it look cohesive with the first image. I felt like it played really well into that horror aesthetic, highlighted the headset, and really drew from that early 2000s inspiration. Come on, let's get there. Let's finish. For my last ad, I wanted to focus on my mouse, and I knew I wanted to do fantasy pretty early on, since I had already done sci-fi and horror, and those are the three big genres that I played growing up, which felt natural and fitting to something that was inspired by ads I saw as a kid. It definitely took me a little bit of time to come up with a concept that was working. I tried a lot of different things and couldn't really get anywhere, and I was feeling pretty stuck until I had this idea of using a wizard holding some kind of crystal ball and seeing the mouse inside of it. I felt like this played well into the fantasy theme and was a good way to highlight the mouse and really make it feel special or powerful. With that in mind, I jumped into Photoshop and combined a bunch of images to make something that felt like that, and definitely had this mystical sort of magic aura to it without being too over the top or on the nose. From there, I came up with the text "Wield the power of precision." For me, I feel like the most important factor in a mouse is that it's precise, and "wield the power of" definitely had those fantasy vibes as if it was some kind of mystical element or magic weapon. I added the text back in there, which fit really well at the bottom of the image, as well as the logos like before, and really finalized everything with some grain and texture to make all three ads feel like they fit in the same kind of universe or like they're coming from the same company. And with that, I had 3 pretty solid ads that I had a blast working on that I felt like fit the aesthetic that I was going for and called out to that early 2000s nostalgia. Throughout the process of creating these 3 ads, I kept coming back to why things feel so different now as to what they did before. With more companies being bought out by these AAA studios, it feels like a lot of media is being passed through the same marketing filters over and over again. This creates some similarities between projects that otherwise don't really have anything to do with each other, which I think feels boring and kind of washed out. We've also seen minimalism become the default aesthetic, which I think doesn't cater well towards video games because we're building these rich, immersive worlds to explore, and then you're being marketed it with this minimalist graphic or typography that looks like it's more made to fit into a brand kit or an identity like that than it is its own thing. It's almost like designers are being told, make things that all fit into this same feed, rather than before where it was more so, make something that's interesting and unique that could really stand out. With the rise of so many different digital mediums, advancements in AI, and design in general just becoming more and more accessible, it feels like designers are starting to lose a little bit of the intention on why they're creating. It feels like these designs are being cranked out faster and faster, which leads to the whole industry feeling a little bit burnt out and uninspired. And don't get me wrong, you still have tons and tons of talented designers and smaller studios that are really pushing the envelope on what's possible, but I just think that there could always be more of this. One of the things that I personally love about design, and a big reason that I started as a graphic designer, was it's almost always counterculture and people's passion projects that are responsible for pushing the landscape in a positive direction. I think about all these cool projects I've seen online and how 9 out of 10 times it's not someone that is doing something for work or because they have to. It's that they're really passionate about it and they just want to share their work with the world. I think that everyone has a unique voice, and I encourage you to get out there no matter what it is you're passionate about and just do something with it and share it with other people. I think the internet in general has created a really interesting landscape where anyone can be successful and anyone can show this is like, I'm yapping about bullshit. I think that when we create from a place of passion and we can be truly inspired, we make some of our best work. For me, that was the point of starting this YouTube channel. I want a place where I can share some creative projects and really push myself to get better every single day. I do hope that you enjoyed this video and that you'll stick around with me to see some of those projects come to fruition in the future. That's all I got for now though, so again, thank you for watching and stay tuned for more. See ya.